If we're a left-handed revolver shooter, how do we accomplish our reloads? Well, there are a couple methods that I'm familiar with. One of them comes from Grayson at revolverguy.com. The other one comes from Masad Ayub with an adaptation of his stress fire technique. Grayson's technique works like this. As he runs dry with the revolver, his support hand comes over the top, his thumb activates the cylinder release, his trigger finger moves down and out of the way of the cylinder. Press forward on the cylinder release, and with my offside fingers, I'm helping the cylinder to open. I come through the cylinder window and I get the cylinder in a cigar grip like this, and I can either cradle the back of the revolver here and let my thumb stay out of the way, or I can come a little higher and I can actually get my thumb onto the cylinder for a little extra leverage to keep it open. I then go muzzle skyward, one good swift push on the ejector rod, and then the muzzle goes down, and you can see I can get it pretty much straight down. I access my loading device, I line it up, I release it, I come back in. Now, here's where it gets complicated with this. Remember to pull your offhand finger out of the cylinder window. I then come underneath, my finger stays out of the trigger guard. I snap the revolver shut. I'm actually moving the frame of the revolver to the cylinder rather than the cylinder to the frame. Regrip, come back up, address my threads. In the stress fire technique, to open the cylinder, I'm actually going to use my firing hand thumb. I'm going to push in on this, it's a Ruger, and I'm going to use my offside thumb to open the cylinder, and I'm going to cup the front of it. Muzzle goes skyward. You can see the ejector rod sticking out between my fingers. One good swift strike will clear the cartridges out of the cylinder. I'm going to roll the gun back forward. It's muzzle down, gravity's my friend, I can load it from here. If you have big hands like I do, it kind of impedes the ejector rod throw with that technique. The other option that I have is to come in, open the cylinder, come through the cylinder window, cradle the cylinder, keep my fingers out of the way. One good swift strike, I can then roll it back forward. I can recup the ejector rod if I want to, access my loading device, line it up, close the cylinder, and I'm back in the fight again. So you've seen a couple different cylinder releases for the left-hand methods. The one that we haven't talked about yet is the Colt, and it, like we talked about at the beginning of the series, works a little bit different. With a Colt type cylinder release, rather than pushing in or pushing forward, Colt cylinder releases pull to the back. There's a couple ways that I can address that. If I'm doing the stress fire technique, I can come up, I can curl my finger, and I can pull the cylinder release back, open the cylinder, address it this way. If I'm doing the Grayson technique, I can come over the top, pull the cylinder release to the rear, help the cylinder out, and then open it and reload from there. It's really common in today's firearms world to talk about one-handed reloads for the auto pistol. They're super important. But the reason that we talk about that is in my day, we actually talked about one-handed reloads for the revolver in case we were injured and either hand was taken out of play. I was lucky enough to have an instructor at Modesto Junior College by the name of Don Clark that took the officer survival movement very seriously and drilled these techniques into us so that we would know how to fight even if we were injured. If I'm wounded in my left hand and I'm firing my revolver with my right hand, the way that I was taught to reload the revolver with one hand is this. I come back into my body and I choke up into the gun. I'm stabilizing it off of my abdomen. I hit the cylinder release. On a Ruger it's in, Smith it's forward, Colt it's back. I come through the cylinder window, and yes, I'm going to burn myself on the back of the forcing cone if it's hot, but I allow the revolver to hang on my thumb. I hit the ejector rod with my fingers so that I can get one good swift strike in it. I then roll the gun down, I grip the cylinder, I roll it around. This keeps the cylinder open, barrel goes into my waistband, ejector rod is outside, barrel is inside to keep it open. I access my loading device, I come in, I release it, I come out, finger away from the trigger, I roll it onto my leg, close and lock the cylinder, and I'm back into the fight again if I need to be. the one-hand, left-hand reload. As I come out of the fight, I know I have an empty gun. I come down close to my body for stability. I roll the gun into my hand and I activate the cylinder release. With the Ruger, I'm going to push in. Colt, I'd sweep back. Smith, I'd push forward. Open the cylinder. Fingers go through the cylinder window. I'm cupping the backside of the revolver to stabilize it. One good swift push on the ejector rod with my thumb. I then roll around the cylinder again and I come into my belt line, trapping the ejector rod on the outside, barrel on the inside, access my loading device, line it up. Now I can either close with my trigger finger or I can sweep against my body, close the cylinder, get back into the fight again. So you saw how to do one-handed reloads with a full-size revolver, 4-inch barrel, and that works pretty well because you have a lot of barrel to go into the waistline to help stabilize it during the reload. But let's talk about the real world where most of us carry a short 2-inch barreled revolver as a backup gun, and now we need to reload this. The way that that's going to happen is I'm still going to open the cylinder, eject my cartridges, or eject my cartridges, depending on how that works. But then I'm going to roll it, and instead of sticking the barrel into my belt like this, because now the revolver has a propensity to fall out, I'm actually going to roll it in at an angle to hold the cylinder open. I access my loading device. I come in, find the charge holes, but before I push to release, I'm going to rotate back up, release now so that gravity is still my friend. I can either close with my thumb or rotate closed on my leg, and I'm back in the fight again. So in the left-hand version of the one-hand reload with a snubby, it would work like this. I'd still come forward, open the cylinder, fingers through the cylinder window, eject my cartridges. Now I'm going to roll it around and I'm going to stick it into my belt again, get some angle so that the cylinder stays open, access my loading device, line it up, straighten it up, release. Might have to clear it a little bit. I can close the cylinder with my trigger finger. I can close it against my leg, or I can keep my finger here, use it as a spacer, close it, get back in the fight again. So you saw a 2-inch barrel demonstrated with a speed loader, and that's pretty handy if you're actually carrying that as a primary loading device. However, most of us that are running these for backup guns are running speed strips because they're flat and they're easier to conceal. So if I have my 2-inch gun and I've gotten into the fight and now I'm wounded, I have to reload it with my right hand. Same thing as always, I'm going to open it up, I'm going to work the ejection rod, I'm going to come around the cylinder and I'm going to tuck it into my belt line. Then I'm going for my speed strip in my pocket. I'm going to come up, I'm going to index it, I'm going to put cartridges in. You can see on this one there's enough room for the cylinder to turn, but I may have to help that a little bit along the way to get a full reload into the gun. Get rid of the speed strip, come back up, close the gun, come back into the fight. In the left-hand variation of this, open the cylinder, again, fingers through the cylinder window, eject the brass. I'm going to roll the gun around until I can get it into my belt line, tucked in as tight as I can get it. I'm going to access my speed strip. I'm going to come in and I'm going to try and get 2 into the cylinder each time, but it may actually be more convenient to try and get 1 in at a time. Switch the speed strip around, roll the cylinder to help it a little bit, finish the reload. May lose a round on this, come out. I can either close with my finger or with a spacer and get back into the fight again. One of the things we might want to think about when we're running a speed strip, snub nose revolver, one-hand reload is, when do we accept a partial reload in our world? Well, to me, if I know that I have a threat closing on me, I think they're trying to flank me, I'm probably going to accept a partial reload on my revolver. So if I'm running a right-hand reload and I've got it tucked into my waist and ready for that, I've accessed my speed strip, but I know that I've got something coming at me, I may only take the time to get 2 into the gun, stow the speed strip where I can get at it again. This is where cylinder rotation comes into play. I rolled the cylinder around, I lined it up, I closed it. I now have on the Smith, because it goes counterclockwise, cartridges on the right-hand side. And now I know that I've got 2 rounds in the gun and ready to go. But what happens if it's dark, I can't index that, I don't have time to look at it, and I just snap the cylinder shut? Well, here's the fact of the matter. I'm gonna have to squeeze the trigger until I get a round to go off. So I may get a click or a couple of clicks even before I get a live round, but at least I have live rounds in the gun without spending a bunch of time trying to get them in there.